All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, broadcasting you from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends, Jason and Catherine and Dan, and Lori will probably be back on here in just a minute. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And we are in the section entitled The Three Horseshoes, the first life she's kind of trying on from the Midnight Library. This is the story about Nora and her experience. And but before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it away with the reading.
Hey everybody, great to be here, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful morning in your neck of the woods.
Dan Sisek here in semi-cloudy Las Vegas, and looking forward to getting into this next part and hearing what everybody has to share.
Good morning, everybody. This is Catherine Clement. I'll be doing the reading, and we're going to be starting at the Three Horseshoes. And just to remind you, at the end of the last chapter, she was in the library, Nora was in the library, and she had chosen to go back to a lifetime with Dan, where she stayed with Dan. So the Three Horseshoes. Nora was standing outside in crisp, clean air. But unlike in Bedford, it wasn't raining here. Where am I? She whispered to herself. There was a small row of quaint stone terraced houses on the other side of the gently curving road. Quiet, old houses, with all their lights off, nestled at the edge of a village before fading into the stillness of the countryside. A clear sky, an expanse of dotted stars, a waning crescent moon, the smell of fields, the two-way twit-twoo of tawny owls, and then quiet again. A quiet that had a presence, that was a force in the air. Weird. She had been in Bedford, then in that strange library, and now she was here on a pretty village road without hardly even moving. On this side of the road, golden light filtered out of a downstairs window. She looked up and saw an elegantly painted pub sign creaking softly in the wind. Overlapping horseshoes underneath carefully italicized words, the Three Horseshoes. In front of her, there was a chalkboard standing on the pavement. She recognized her own handwriting at its neatest. The Three Horseshoes, Tuesday night, quiz night, 8:30 p.m. True knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing. Socrates, after losing our quiz, exclamation points. This was a life where she put 4 exclamation marks in a row. That was probably what happier, less uptight people did. Promising omen. She looked down at what she was wearing, a denim shirt with sleeves rolled halfway up her forearms, and jeans and wedge-heeled shoes, none of which she wore in her actual life. She had goosebumps from the cold and clearly wasn't dressed to be outside for long. There were 2 rings on her ring finger. Her old sapphire engagement ring was there, the same one she had taken off through trembles and tears over a year ago, accompanied by a simple silver wedding band. Crackers. She was wearing a watch, not a digital one in this life, an elegant, slender analog one with Roman numerals. It was about a minute after midnight. How is this happening? Her hands were smoother in this life. Maybe she used hand cream. Her nails shone with clear polish. There was some comfort in seeing the familiar small mole on her left hand. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Someone was heading towards her down the driveway. A man, visible from the light of the pub windows and the solitary street lamp. A man with rosy cheeks and gray Dickensian whiskers and a wax jacket, a Toby jug made flesh. He seemed, from his overly careful gait, to be slightly drunk. Good night, Nora. I'll be back on Friday. For the folk singer. Dan said he's a good one. In this life, she probably knew the man's name. Right, Yes, of course, Friday. It should be a great night. At least her voice sounded like her. She watched as the man crossed the road, looking left and right a few times, despite the clear absence of traffic, and disappearing down a lane between the cottages. It was really happening. This was actually it. This was the pub life. This was the dream made reality. This is so very weird, she said into the night. So very weird. A group of 3 left the pub, then 2. 2 women and a man. They smiled at Nora as they walked past. We'll win next time, one of the women said. Yes, replied Nora. There's always next time. She walked up to the pub and peeked through the window. It seemed empty inside, but the lights were still on. That group must have been the last to leave. The pub looked very inviting, warm and characterful. Small tables and timber beams and a wagon wheel attached to the wall. A rich red carpet and a wood-paneled bar full of an impressive array of beer pumps. She stepped away from the window and saw a sign just beyond the pub, past where the pavement became grass. Quickly she trotted over and read what it said. Littleworth welcomes careful drivers. Then she noticed in the top center of the sign a little coat of arms around which orbited the words Oxfordshire County Council. We did it, she whispered into the country air. We actually did it. This was the dream Dan had first mentioned to her while walking by the Seine in Paris, eating macarons and they had bought on the boulevard St. Michael. A dream, not of Paris, but of rural England, where they would live together. A pub in Oxfordshire countryside. When Nora's mom's cancer aggressively returned, reaching her lymph nodes and rapidly colonizing her body, that dream was put on hold, and Dan moved with her from London back to Bedford. Her mom had known of their engagement and had planned to stay alive long enough for the wedding. She had died 4 months too soon. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the life. Maybe this was the first time lucky or second time lucky. She allowed herself an apprehensive smile. She walked back along the path and crunched over the gravel, heading towards the side door the drunken, whiskery man in the wax jacket had recently departed from. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. It was warm and quiet. She was in some kind of hallway or corridor, terracotta floor tiles, low wood paneling, and above wallpaper full of illustrations of sycamore leaves. She walked down the little corridor and into the main pub area, which she had peeked at through the window. She jumped as a cat appeared out of nowhere. An elegant, angular chocolate Burmese purring away. She bent down and stroked it and looked at the engraved name on the disc attached to the collar. Voltaire. A different cat with the same name. Unlike her dear beloved Ginger Tabby, she doubted this Voltaire was a rescue. The cat began to purr. Hello, Volts number 2. You seem happy here. Are we all as happy as you? The cat purred a possible affirmation and rubbed his head against Nora's leg. She picked him up and went over to the bar. There was a row of craft beers on the pumps, stouts and ciders and pale ales and IPAs. Vickers' favorite, Lost and Found, Miss Marple, Sleeping Lemons, Broken Dream. There was a charity tin on the bar for butterfly conservation. She heard the sound of clinking glass, as if a dishwasher was being filled. Nora felt anxiety constrict her chest, a familiar sensation. Then a spindly 20-something man in a baggy rugby top popped up from behind the bar, hardly giving any attention to Nora as he gathered the last remaining used glasses and put them in the dishwasher. He switched it on, then pulled down his coat from a hook, put it on, and took out some car keys. Bye, Nora. I've done the chairs and wiped all the tables. Dishwasher's on. Oh, thanks. Till Thursday. Yes, Nora said, feeling like a spy about to have her cover blown. See you. The moment after the man left, she heard footsteps rising up from somewhere below, heading across the tile she had just walked down, coming from the back of the pub. And then he was there. He looked different. The beard had gone, and there were more wrinkles around his eyes, dark circles. He had a nearly finished pint of dark beer in his hand. He still looked a bit like a TV vet, just a few more series down the line. Dan, she said, as if he was something that needed identifying, like a rabbit by the road. I just want to say I'm so proud of you, so proud of us. He looked at her blankly. Was just turning the chiller units off, got to clean the lines tomorrow. We've left it a fortnight. Nora had no idea what he was talking about. She stroked the cat. Right, yes, of course, the lines. Her husband, for in this life that was who he was, looked around at all the tables and upside down chairs. He was wearing a faded Jaws t-shirt. Have Blake and Sophie gone home? Nora hesitated. She sensed he was talking about people who worked for them. The young man in the baggy rugby top was presumably Blake. There didn't seem to be anyone else around. Yes, she said, trying to sound natural despite the fundamental bizarreness of the circumstances. I think they have. They were pretty on top of things. Cool. She remembered buying him the Jaws t-shirt on his 26th birthday, 10 years previously. The answers tonight were something else. One of the teams, the one Pete and Jolie were on, thought Maradona painted the Sistine ceiling. Nora nodded and stroked bolts number 2 as if she had any idea who on earth Pete and Jolie were. To be fair, it was a tricky one tonight. Might take them from another website next time. I mean, who actually knows the name of the highest mountain in the range? Karakoram, Nora asked. That would be K2. Well, obviously you know, he said, a little too abruptly, a little too tipsily. It's the kind of thing you would know, because while most people were into rock music, you were into actual rocks and stuff. Hey, she said, I was literally in a band. A band, she remembered then, that Dan had hated her being in. He laughed. She recognized the laugh, but didn't entirely like it. She had forgotten how often during their relationship Dan's humor hinged on other people, specifically Nora. When they'd been together, she had tried not to dwell on this aspect of his personality. He'd had so many other aspects. He'd been so lovely to her mom when she was ill, and he could talk at ease about anything. He was so full of dreams about the future. He was attractive and easy to be around, and he was passionate about art and always stopped to chat to the homeless. He cared about the world. A person was like a city. You couldn't let a few less desirable parts put you off the whole. There may be bits you don't like, a few dodgy side streets and suburbs, but the good stuff makes it worthwhile. He had listened to a lot of annoying podcasts that he thought Nora should listen to, and laughed in a way that grated on her and gargled loudly with mouthwash. And yes, he hogged the duvet and could occasionally be arrogant in his opinions on art and film and music, but there was nothing overtly wrong with him. Well, now that she thought about it, he'd never been supportive of her music career and had advised her that being in the labyrinths and signing a music deal would be bad for her mental health, and that her brother was being a bit selfish. But at the time, she had viewed that not so much as a red flag, but a green one. Her thinking was, he cared, and it was nice to have someone who cared, who wasn't bothered about fame and superficialities and could help navigate the waters of life. And so, when he had asked her to marry him in the cocktail bar on the top floor of the Oxo Tower, she had agreed, and maybe she had always been right to agree. He stepped forward into the room, placed his pint down momentarily, and was now on his phone looking at better pub quiz questions. She wondered how much he had drunk tonight. She wondered if the dream of owning a pub had really been a dream of drinking an endless supply of alcohol. What is the name of a 20-sided polygon? I don't know, Nora lied, not wanting to risk a similar reaction to the one she'd received a moment ago. He put the phone in his pocket. We did well, though. They all drank loads tonight. Not bad for a Tuesday. Things are looking up. I mean, sorry, I had a notification pop up. It's blocking my text. Things are looking up. I mean, there's something to tell the bank tomorrow. Maybe they'll give us an extension on the loan. He stared at the beer in his glass, swilled it around a little, and then downed it. Oh, I've got to tell AJ to change the lunch menu. No one in Littleworth wants to eat candied beetroot and broad bean salad and corn cakes. This isn't pissing Fitzrovia. And I know they're going down well, but I think those wines you chose aren't worth it, especially the Californian ones. Okay. He turned and looked behind him. Where's the board? What? The chalkboard. Thought you'd brought it in. So that was what she had been outside for. No, I'm going to do it now. Thought I saw you go out. Nora smiled away her nerves. Yes, well, I did. I had to. I was worried about our cat, Voltaire. I couldn't find him, so I went outside to look for him, and then I found him, didn't I? Dan was back behind the bar, pouring himself scotch. He seemed to sense she was judging him. This is only my third, fourth, maybe. It's quiz night. You know I get nervous doing the compering, and it helps me be funny. And I was funny, don't you reckon? Yes, very funny. Total funniness. His face fell into a serious mode. I saw you talking to Erin. What did she say? Nora wasn't sure how best to answer this. Oh, nothing much. The usual stuff. You know Erin. The usual stuff? I didn't think you'd ever spoken to her before. I meant the usual stuff that people say, not what Erin says. Usual people stuff. How's Will doing? Really well, Nora guessed. He says hi. Dan's eyes popped wide with surprise. Really? Nora had no idea what to say. Maybe Will was a baby. Maybe Will was in a coma. Sorry, no, he didn't say hi. Sorry, I'm not thinking. Anyway, I'll go and get the board. She put the cat down on the floor and headed back out. This time she noticed something she had missed on entering. Framed newspaper article from the Oxford Times with a picture of Nora and Dan standing outside the Three Horseshoes. Dan had his arm around her. He was wearing a suit she had never seen before, and she was in a smart dress she would never have worn. She rarely wore dresses in her original life. And then it starts at, it says, pub owners make dream a reality. That's the name of the newspaper article. And I think we'll stop here and discuss what's been read already.
Sounds good. Yeah, I was, when we first started into this section, I was imagining, what would it be like to have this experience of like an alternate reality based on a decision in my past that I did or didn't make. And it was like all these weird emotional internal excitement and worry and stress and and all of that. And I was like, this would just be such a weird thing to have this really happen, as if this is real. I mean, I know it's a fiction book, but how many times do we go into a fiction book and then really imagine what that would be like? And it was just a weird rush of random emotions of in a similar situation. Like I had a person in my life when I was younger who I feel like, I'm like, what if I had said what was really on my mind in, these couple of different situations and but when I was young, I was a teenager, I was like so afraid of what that other person might say, or afraid of rejection or whatever it was. And what would it have been like if I had said those things and he had reacted positively and we had ended up, in a relationship? What would that be? What would my life look like? It was just like this odd kind of sensation of wondering of what if we could actually go and try on a previous or an alternate reality where we had made a different decision. And my thought on that was like, that would be really cool if I always knew I could come back to this life, like it was a vacation. I could just take a little vacation of like a virtual reality session of like the movie Total Recall. I know that ended up being like a crazy adventure thing and all of that, but they had those like the imaginary vacation where they just injected these memories into your brain of this vacation that you were going on. And I'm like, wouldn't that be just really interesting to be able to do that? And I don't know, it was just like that's all my thoughts when we first started reading this section.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd probably be a lot like her if I got into that. It's like, oh, okay, it'd be more like, where am I? What, and I'd be like, it would just be weird, I would almost think it's surreal. It's like, okay, is this really, I'd probably stand there blinking my eyes, shaking my head, going, is this, it would probably take me a little longer than her. And I would probably ask a lot of questions like, what, I'd probably have to play it off. Oh, I slipped outside and hit my head or something, and, kind of lost, that type of thing, because it would just really throw me for a loop. But I'm kind of like you, though. I would love to see how it could have played out and the differences of where my life might have gone had I gone down that path. And would that have been the better choice than the choice I did make? Because then in this choice, it looks like things are in a lot of ways better for her. So in for us, getting to see, be able to kind of walk into that without, the only thing I would hate is not knowing how I got there. That would drive me up the wall. It'd be like, okay, what, because at that point, do you remember all the little things you did to go to that route? Or in her case, kind of like you're just dropped in and you're kind of fumbling your way through. I think that's what would drive me nuts, is like, what really took me here to get here to where I made the decision here to do this. That, I think that would just ultimately drive me up the wall. I think it would. Being the logical mind analyzing of everything that I do when I look at things.
I thought that it was interesting that she chose this life to go back to. I think I think this is reincarnation, basically. I think we do this. We get done with this life, and then we're like, oh, what would have happened if I'd have done this other? And then the next thing you know, here we go again, because our curiosity never ends. We are creators at our very being. Like, that's what we are. We create. So our imagination would never get tired of figuring out new lives to live, I'm sure. For some reason, I don't feel like this one's going to fit her very well either. Just from what we've read so far. Although at least she's looking at the positive side of things sometimes anyway, like she was kind of comparing his positive traits with his negative traits. Before, she would have just focused on the negative. So she's definitely learning through going through some of these experiences. I thought it was good that or maybe she hasn't quite recognized it yet, but she's beginning to recognize that she doesn't always speak her truth, and she hides her intelligence from her husband because of the way that he responds to her, and he does it in a joking way, but people can be very cruel through joking. I mean, they can be joking and cruel at the same time, just like they can be joking and depressed. I mean, when you think that there's a lot of comedians that are actually depressed, but they come out and they put on a show. But that's a very common thing. I remember even like in first grade, I remember like I knew all the answers when the teacher would ask a question, I was that kid that could throw up my hand and answer every question. But I remember purposefully not answering some questions because of the bullying and stuff that goes on when you kids are just cruel. Anything that's different from them is just, you know. So, and then I remember doing that as well, in relationships, kind of downplaying my brains at times because that wasn't uh, what that wasn't what was focused on as a woman back in those days. I mean, this was a different time when I was growing up, and you were supposed to be focused more on being a good wife, taking care of the kids, keeping a clean house, different things like that. So intelligence wasn't necessarily something you wanted to shine a spotlight on. And I think a lot of people do that, and not just women and not just, young women, but men and boys as well, because they're supposed to be, and I say this with air quotation marks, men are supposed to be focused on sports and, all this, that, and the other, and not necessarily, or, making a good living. But it wasn't necessary, like the dad figure was always, back then, if you had a dad figure in your life, like he had the final say back then. Things are much different now. I think the landscape between men and women has really super changed through the years. And the landscape with children as well. Children don't see a father figure necessarily as the last word anymore. Unfortunately, they go to social media and stuff for a lot of their guidance, which is getting really scary, some of the stuff that's going on. But back to the original point, I think it's very common for people to downplay aspects about themselves so that it comes down to being accepted by the tribe. We have to go back and remember that we're tribunal people, and being different from the rest of the tribe gets you ostracized, kicked out to the edge, eaten by wolves.
But sometimes our uniqueness, I guess, maybe for lack of a better way of saying it, is what can help. I think for me, in some cases, some of my quirks and weird things I use to kind of protect myself, though, too. And I think it's my protecting myself. It's not so much me trying to project anything. I think it's more of because I do understand that other people will say or do things that are, and in some cases I realize they're not meaning to have it come across the way they are saying or projecting it, but it's still me. And I think that leads sometimes to where we're afraid to live the lives that we dream of or want to live or feel that we, because of what's going on around us or things, and sometimes I think we go off on tangents in our lives because of those things. And then we're already in that realm of our lives, and it's hard to switch back and go back to make those changes. And so like this book giving Nora the rare opportunity to actually kind of, albeit be literally dropped in on that, this life that we're reading about now, but having to kind of re-feel her way through it, I think that's, something that would be hard to deal with too, because going back to what I was saying earlier, me and knowing me and how I am, the way I analyze and look things and see things, that would just drive me up the wall and not see what came behind to help get me here. And so then that way I would understand why I'm there and where I'm headed. So in that sense, but the freedom of the perspective that she's getting to maybe be able to learn and understand enough about ourselves that, oh yeah, I really can be this way, but here I let go and let loose and am this way. Now maybe can I meld the two together? Maybe that's something to look at or put out there, postulate to, okay, can I meld some of this with that and still keep some of both and still get to the life that I think I would like to have.
Are you saying that possibly having things in our lives that to work for or against helps us in a way to shape our lives?
Yeah, maybe I was just throwing some stuff out there to maybe, kind of give us pause to think, that if we had the chance to really drop in on another one of the arcs or paths that our lives could have taken, with full knowledge of what we are now and what got us to where this point is, and being dropped in there, and the good parts of what decisions and choices and things we took there that were, and this, can they both coincide together? Because we obviously make choices and decisions based on what's going on around us, and those help shape the patterns and directions where our lives go. But I know I've often wondered, well, had I made that decision, certain decisions, and I've sat there and thought, well, where would that have taken my life? Would I have become this? Would I have done that? Would I live somewhere else now? What type of friends would I have there? Would I have similar friends to like what I have now? And dealing with certain aspects of Samantha and I were talking a little bit earlier about some stuff going on with my best friend, and I mentioned him before, but now he's basically going home, being told by his doctors, that, and doctors don't have the absolute say, or, but he's kind of being told that, maybe he has 3 or 4 months to live. How do you deal with that too? Then, if, would, I hope I kind of am getting my idea across, because she's being dropped in, knowing some of the things that in her head, knowing some of how she was and who she was and how she responded to things before, but then seeing this alternate life and being in it now, the choices that she made to be married and all this now, but can she take the two and put them together and maybe bring out the full person that she is and that she wants to be, rather than being those those distinct people that were on those paths.
You're right, right. Well, the push and the pull and the the obstacles and the challenges do certainly play a big part, I think, in someone's life, and whether they're compelled to go down a unbeaten path and do something other than what they're being pushed to do, or if they're just going with the flow. I would think. I mean, it seems like that. Seems like that to me. It seems to me like the author is sort of playing that memory game thing, though it seems natural to me, and it seems like something that, hey, yeah, or maybe I've just watched too many television shows with that sort of a thing where someone experiences another life like this, and then they hop in and into that life, and they actually remember the previous life. They don't know very much about the new life, and so she's painting this. I love the way she writes and paints the environment, so that you can sort of almost see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it, with the beers and everything, and the kitty cat, and the way she describes everything. And it sort of lulls you into this feeling of like, okay, yeah, this isn't so bad. Maybe this is, but she doesn't have the full picture just yet of what is actually going on. And as you mentioned in the past, Catherine, we as human beings, we tend to put on a mask for certain events in our lives, or whatever. You get on TV, or maybe even on the Zoom call, and you put on a certain face, or that's maybe not as authentic as you really feel, but you might do it in order to appease your group, or the people you're around, or make things fit in a little bit better. But she hasn't, in this section, it doesn't seem like she knows quite enough of what's actually going on to read through the lines, and read through the faces, and know the backstory, even her own backstory at this point. So we'll see where it goes.
I think it's interesting to think about that for a second, and it's like, if she knows all the backstory, if she knows all the story of all the people who are in her life, in this life that she's experiencing in the moment, then she knows how to react. Like, but that's really not necessarily a true statement. That's how if she knew and she was reacting based on all of those factors, then she's only reacting because of that. But like right now, she's in this moment where she can kind of literally, with no choice of it, she has no kind of choice in the matter of, she has to literally be in awe of the situation, if you were, kind of in innocence, like taking her own banana bullshit, or whatever you want to call it, out of the back of her mind, because it's not even there at this point. It's not there. And so she only has the option to look at this scene with kind of a sense of wonder to some extent, because like you said, that when she sees Dan, and she kind of she remembers back to interactions she had with him in the past to know how she should react, if you will, in this situation. And then she mentions the drinking, and then she mentions how she knows that he is annoyed or whatever by her knowledge and that sort of thing, and how he didn't like the fact that she was in a band. And, you know, she's immediately taking these assumptions and pushing them into her current reality of, okay, because of this, I'm going to act in this way, rather than staying in this sense of wonder of, you know, what could this be if I just let go of all that mumbo jumbo, because it may or may not even be true, you know. So it's an interesting thought, and it made me also think, okay, you know, every day I go into these interactions with my family members with these assumptions based on the past, based on past experiences. And what if I went into these interactions with people with a sense of wonder, as if this is the first time we've ever interacted in this life? What a weird idea. But I'm like, you know, how would that change the dynamic of my relationships, you know? And it was interesting yesterday, my friend Myra and I were having this conversation, and she was telling me about something that her husband had done that just annoyed the shit out of her. I mean, she was so upset about this action that he had taken, and this way that he was in just this thing that he did that was like a personal interaction thing. And I was like, it dawned on me that I did the exact same thing just a couple days before to my husband. And I'm like, I'm being a dick, you know, I'm right, like recognizing that I'm literally being a dick to my husband. And I'm like, okay, I just didn't even realize I was doing that. And now, you know, how can I stop doing it? How can I recognize it before it happens that I'm doing this thing that I didn't even know I was doing? And this kind of makes me kind of wonder, you know, maybe this is kind of the key, is to go into every reaction with this, or every interaction with my close family members, because we have all this history. But if I can like let go of all this presumed stuff that I think that I know about that person or about our previous reactions, and go into it with more of a sense of wonder of, okay, what does this moment hold? What does this communication hold for me? What can I learn from this person, or learn about this person, if I let go of all this shit that I think that I know about what they are going to say in any given situation, or what I think they think, you know, all of those kinds of things. How would that be different, particularly with my husband? How can I just go into every conversation with a sense of just wonder, or just openness? I guess that's what it is, just an openness to the possibility of who knows what could come out of this interaction in any moment. Because like if we were stepping into this imaginary, if you will, I mean, from her point of view, it's not necessarily imaginary, but if it was an imaginary, and how do we know the difference between the imagination and reality, other than we feel like we're not in our imagination, I guess. So I'm rambling now. Here we go.
No, but you make some good points. But too, it's hard to, I think we would all love to go into those moments fresh and new and try and go with that thought. And I think we all need to work on doing that more and try and go from that point, so that way we give those the other people involved in that the chance to maybe react a different way. But at the same point, I know for me and my family, half the time it seems like they still react that same way, even if I try to give them that point, and then it, you know, switches that button in me, and I'm like, well, damn it, you know, you're irritating me, you know, and then I go back into my automatic mode, and it's, you know, it's hard to stay in that, because you really have to work at it. And, you know, that's why a lot of times I try to stop and pause and take a moment before I say stuff. Sometimes doesn't always happen, I'm being honest, it does not, especially when it comes to family, good close friends, you know. But I try to stop and say, you know, give myself that moment to think and not just react. Sometimes I still react, but it just takes me a minute longer because I slow down. But I think that would be the way to, if we all really wanted to, we really all would like to do that and create each moment for what that moment is and what we feel it should have been. Because a lot of times when we go back in retrospect and look at it after the fact, we said, well, oh, I could have done this that way too. Maybe elicit a different response out of them. And then maybe we could have gotten to this rather than having it blow up in our face. But half the time it blows up in our faces and we're right back where we were. So then the next time it comes around, we have that because it's so superimposed on us and in our brains and in our physicality, because I think a lot of what happens, we also feel. And so even when we get into those moments, we're already, like this, when we're trying to be like this and want to be like this. And it's that, like with muscle memory, like in working out, it's that muscle memory of, oh, we're getting into this area again. Oh, we're gonna, they're acting like that. And it's just that auto response sometimes and learning how to override it. But I think sometimes we have a hard time overriding it. It takes a lot of extra work and energy on our part. And sometimes we feel like, why should I be the one doing all the work? Why can't they do some of the work too, to do the same thing, to meet halfway at least?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Is that, particularly the part of, we kind of get stuck in our own patterns and I don't know. I had to let go of the idea a number of years ago of Chris doing the work. He's not going to do it. He's not me. He doesn't study this stuff. This is not what he's going to do. It's just not his. I try and tell him to do all kinds of things that I think he should do because I think it's a good way to do it or whatever, and he's just not going to do that. And I have to allow for him to be on his own spiritual and personal and whatever journey, because the only person I can control is myself. And I have a hard time controlling myself, let alone controlling anybody else. And so I had to let go of this idea that he should do the work. And by doing that, for me, that helped me be able to be like, okay, if I want to feel different, I have to change the way that I am being. And right now, when I was in this recognizing moment, and this happened last time she came to visit me, she was telling me about all these things her husband did. And I was like, oh shit, I'm doing that to Chris, And, but I had to recognize, okay, these are the things that I'm doing. And I know that this is creating discourse within our marriage. It is creating unpleasantness in our communication. It is causing these different things. And I don't want to be the cause of that. And granted, I can't control how he has his automatic reactions to whatever. All I can do is control myself. And one thing I learned years ago when I was living at the camper and I had an interaction with Chris, and I had a kind of a light bulb moment of, oh, he blew up at me and I was like, oh shit. I guess I am doing that thing. And it like, in that situation, it diffused the whole thing. But another thing I noticed is that by me changing my behavior, it magically changed the whole dynamic of our relationship. Now, it didn't change or fix everything. I mean, that did not happen, but it changed and fixed a lot of things. And every time that I have this kind of revelation of one thing that I recognize that I'm doing in it that could be hurtful or disregarding or unpleasant, or I'm just plain being a dick for whatever reason that may be, when I recognize it and I take action to make different changes in my life in the way that I interact with him, then the whole dynamic of our relationship twists just a little bit. It changes a little bit every time and gets better from my perspective. Now, is it better from his perspective? I have no idea. I have no idea. I hope so. I hope that because it seems to be better for me, that it is also better for him, but I really don't know. And so that's my thought.
Isn't it fascinating how the universe mirrors stuff back at us? I had the exact same experience with a very close friend who was extremely hurt and offended and just really got her panties in a wad, over something that a mutual friend had said to her. And how much offense she took to what had been said to her. And I realized in that moment, oh my God, I do that to people all the time, Like it never occurred to me that anybody would take that in an offensive way. Like, because you were talking earlier about it, just the way your mind works, you will kind of think ahead. Well, if this doesn't turn out like this, then I'll need to go in this direction, or you kind of think things through a little bit. And that's all that third friend was doing, was kind of saying, hey, if this doesn't turn out the way you think, then there's always this kind of she was actually trying to be very supportive, but the my friend took it as that she was by coming up with this alternative plan and saying, even thinking the thought that it might not go the way she planned, that she was changing the manifestation, and it really upset her and really offended her deeply. And as someone who does believe in manifestation and the power of words, of course I was like, well, shit. Because I am one of those people that, sometimes thinks ahead about things. And I have plan Bs and plan Cs and Ds and Es and Gs sometimes, because I've found in the past I need those extra plans. But like you said, maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe if I don't think about those alternate things, then maybe none of that will happen. I don't know. I really don't know how much power our words have. Like, one part of me thinks that they have absolute power. And then another part of me thinks God could not be that cruel to put us down here with absolute power with our words, as idiot brained as we are at this point. I mean, we're such a beginning species here. Like, we haven't even figured out what consciousness is yet. Like, science hasn't even acknowledged that consciousness exists, because they can't describe the source. They can't figure out the source. So they just don't even admit that consciousness exists. And obviously consciousness exists because we are animated beings, so but I find it absolutely fascinating how we are given, I'm sure, multiple lives to go over some of these things, but even just within this one life, so many different opportunities to change the way we do things. And sadly, many times we don't. We recognize, I guess that's the first step, right? They say that's the first step, is to acknowledge that you're whatever you are, acknowledge where you're at. So at least if we're acknowledging that we're recognizing that we do have way more choices than what we may take advantage of. And it is easy, especially with our loved ones, to, we feel like maybe we don't have to put on a show. You know what I mean? Like, you just home, you just want to be able to be yourself. You don't want to have to put the self-development mask on right now, or whatever it is. You just want to be able to say whatever's on your mind, and that's not always the most conducive thing to do. Plan doesn't always work out so well. And then there's things that we don't have in our control. And not everybody, but like for me personally, I have to take a medication to be able to exist because of this pain. And this drug alters my mind and alters my coping. It alters my reaction time. It alters a lot of things. And then because I've been on it for so long, a couple years now, my body is pretty much addicted to it. And so if I miss a dose, my behavior can become erratic within hours. I dislike this drug so much, but I have to take it because I can't find anything else that works right now. I continue to search, but I can. The drug does not allow me to make choices. It feels like my choices are gone, and it's very frustrating to have something that's mind controlling in that way. So we have to remember that, just like you don't know what's going on with anybody in any given moment, you also don't know what may or may not be controlling their actions or their abilities. And there are many drugs that may not be as mind altering as the one that I'm on, but drugs and situations that affect people and drive them in ways that they feel out of control. Learning to take control and make the choice to stay in the moment. It all goes back to Eckhart Tolle. He always preaches the power of now. Staying in the moment, I mean, it sounds like such a simple, easy, kind of silly, stupid thing, but it's huge when you can actually pull it off, and have an interaction with someone from scratch, like you said, Samantha, where this conversation is full of possibilities, and it doesn't have to be the way that our last interaction was. I would love my children haven't spoken to each other in years, and they were very close as siblings. And I remember the moment that things went off the rail for them. And sadly, it was driven by, at the time, my son was coming off of mind altering drugs. He had a very harsh addiction that I, thank God, was able to detox him out of. But being a nurse, I recognized how he was acting, and I recognized that it was being caused by the drugs. It wasn't really him. So, you have to keep that in mind when you're interacting with people. You don't know what all's going on with them. And when they act strange or when they offend you, if you can, let it remind you of a time when you've offended someone else, like Samantha and I, like we realized, holy shit, we've been doing that to people all the time, So maybe next time somebody offends you, instead of stepping into that victim, I'm offended place, if you can let it be a mirror and just remind you, oh, remember when you did that to so and so, and that brings about compassion, because when we are in a moment where we recognize that we're judging someone, and in that same moment we recognize that we have been the persecutor before, we have done that to other people, that puts us on more of a level playing field, and there's no more, it's simple. The Bible says it, no one is without sin. But we don't think about it that way all the time. We want to just be offended, pissed off about something, which is probably not what we're pissed off about. Anyway, it's the million frustrations that we've pushed down while we've had our mask on, But yeah, try to be as kind and compassionate as you can. I'm watching my parents uh kind of people revert back to childhood almost in some ways as they age. And I'm kind of watching that uh, process happen. And um, it lets me have so much more compassion for them. Just watching that process. And Dan, I wasn't on early enough when you were talking about your friend, but if your friend has been given 3 or 4 months, that's a time if they can. I mean, there's always possibly other, I don't know what remedies or treatments or even what they're trying to treat, but there may be something else that they haven't heard of that could work. So, but if not, what a gift. It's hard to think of it this way, but some people are taken away from us. My mom's best friend, Linda, died weeks ago. And I mean, she saw her on Friday and she was fine, just like we're all sitting here talking to each other. Nobody was sick. She wasn't sick. Nothing was going on. She went to bed one night and she went on to her next life. So to be given notice, hey, you got 3 to 4 months. It sounds like horrible, but at the same time, it's a gift to know that that's coming, to know that you need to get your shit prepared, to know that you can focus on seeing all the people that you love and say to them what you want to say, because that's everybody's regret, is not saying what they wanted to say to somebody, So you can say all those things. You can write a book about your life. There's so many things that can happen in 3 to 4 months, including finding a new cure or treatment, or a miracle. Like miracles happen every day. You just never know. But even if it's not, it's a gift to know that, okay, this is happening and it's horrible and challenging and hard to deal with, but we can do this together, just be there for them and help them through it. And it won't be easy. I mean, there's going to be emotions and shit that come up, but none of us know if we're going to have tomorrow. None of us, When I first got on this morning, y'all were talking about wills and such. I guess that's why, because I had missed that previous conversation. I have a will. I have a living will, and I think everybody should have a will and a living will. I've had a living will since I was 16. If you don't know what that is, a living will is how you want your health taken care of should you not be able to speak for yourself. You usually have somebody that can make decisions for you, but all that needs to be written out. Because if you have more than one family member, that's one of the most challenging things about death and losing someone, is that in the midst of all this grief and heavy emotions, you're having to deal with all this superfluous shit that somebody didn't take care of ahead of time. So no matter your age, I mean, people die at all ages. And especially with like all the shootings and stuff that's going on right now, like it's just a crazy world out there. If you don't have your will written up, don't look at it as a bad foreboding manifestation of your thing. Like I've had a will and a living will for a long, long time, and I'm still here, y'all. So get your stuff in order, and it'll be one less thing to think about, and it will be so much easier on your loved ones should anything happen to you. And not just a will, but like some things that you wanted to say. If if there's things that you want to say to somebody that you can bring yourself to say in person, say it in writing. And you don't want them to read it till after you're gone. That's okay. Put it in your papers there. How do you want to be cremated? I mean, people need to know these things so that they're not having to think about that when they're so full of heavy emotion because you're gone. It really makes a huge difference. And celebrating life instead of mourning death is the key, because everybody's life is just freaking magical, even though, some lives are full of harshness. 50% of the planet doesn't even have indoor plumbing. You guys, like, we're so blessed. We live such blessed, pampered lives. Some people live really, really hard, challenging lives from day one, so just celebrate the life you had and maybe prepare to think about the next one.
Wow, you packed a whole bunch in everything you said. A lot to think about and cover. And, in some ways, I kind of like to have the opportunity, Nora's having to kind of drop in on the life, but I'd like to be able to have the kind of going back to what you said, Samantha, the choice to be able to come back to the one I'm currently in. If I hate to say this, if I didn't like that life, or if it didn't, meet up to, but yeah, I've often wondered, if I had made a couple other decisions, and if my mom hadn't, kind of intervened and said some things, and I'm not blaming her, I made the choices, but if she had not said some things or anything, the difference my life might have been as to what it is now. Would I have better jobs? Would I, the thoughts are so, there's so many out there. And I think sometimes we forget and look at that and say, oh, I lost that opportunity, or, shoulda, coulda, woulda, or, what, well, I missed that opportunity. Well, I think it goes back to what Jason and I think you, Catherine, was saying. We do have the choice to make changes now and to move forward from there. It may not be exactly the same as what it would have been at that time, that choice back then, but who's to say we still can't work towards those things? And you're right, both you and Samantha are right. It comes down to how we ourselves handle ourselves and the choices that we make in the moments when we're in the middle of those moments. Like I said, going back to living in the now, if we remember that, or if we stop and remind ourselves, okay, live in the now, what is being presented to me, and not just knee-jerking reacting to what we think is the right answer, but to really take that moment and look at it. But I hate to say it, sometimes we don't have that moment to take. We have to make almost an instantaneous decision sometimes. So what do we do in those moments to make the best decision that we can to hopefully get to the best decision that we want? I think that's the ultimate question, that we're all still kind of searching for, is how do we know that the decision we're making really truly is the right decision, and that we're not going to later on down the road say, oh, had I thought about it, I should have done that.
It brings up a point that actually a friend of mine from way back made earlier this morning about authenticity. And how authentic are we being with ourselves? How authentic are we being allowed to be? With our own preconceptions about how we're supposed to act, and the ways other people react to the way we're reacting. Are we able to enjoy things as thoroughly as we'd like to, and be excited about things, or are people going to think we're crazy if we're too excited and happy and joyful, and or I mean, it's almost I think, I would imagine that everyone's experienced that sort of a thing where you're not allowed to be authentic, and perhaps when we're making decisions about things, or that there's so much to think about, but are there notions in our own minds that are keeping us from being able to experience and express each and every moment in our lives authentically, in alignment with who we are and who we would like to be. Anyway, I just appreciate each and every one of you. Just some amazing thoughts and points and wisdom today. I really thank you so much, and for everything you said, Dan, and everything you said, Catherine, and Samantha. And thanks for reading, Catherine. Appreciate it once again. But yeah, I hope what has been discussed can maybe make a difference in someone's life, if not soon down the road. It's been a delight to be here. And once again, thank you so much.
Any other final thoughts before we jump off? Okay. Yep. Thank you guys so much for your insights and your thoughts on this. And this has been an enjoyable read. I'm liking this book a little bit. It's kind of interesting. We're talking about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And next week we'll continue our discussion starting on page 50. And but for those of you who are watching, if you have liked what we're talking about here, give this video a like. And if you'd like to participate with us, we'd love to have you. There's a couple of links down below the video in the summary where it talks about, joining our Facebook group, or going to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com for instructions on how to join this Zoom meeting. It's the same link every week, at least for the time being. I haven't changed it in a couple of years now. So we just keep joining on here every morning, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And then I just post the recording on our YouTube channel after that. So anyway, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.